The race for Westchester County Executive turning into a he said allegation, and it is getting dirtier by the day. Big outside money flying in to support the Republican incumbent Rob Astorino, and now Democrat George Latimer facing perhaps his biggest challenge yet. Then President Trump makes his big announcement about fighting the opioid epidemic, but it is falling way short of what he promised on the campaign trail. Tonight, we will explain. And the Menendez trial continues today. A star witness testified for the New Jersey senator. Defense, well, they asked for a dismissal, and we have a front row seat. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Election Day, it's now just 12 days away, and in Westchester County, you can tell the race for county executive has entered the home stretch with new allegations of personal infidelity against the Democratic nominee George Latimer, and Fox 1's Ray Ramundi has that story.
Tonight, State Senator George Latimer on the defensive after the New York Post blasted the Democratic Westchester candidate for traveling overseas with New Rochelle Judge Susan Kettner. When pressed Thursday afternoon about the article, this is how Latimer responded.
When we deal with our personal lives, those are personal things. I'm not going to confirm or deny. I'm not going to involve myself in any speculation.
This photo you see here was posted on Twitter by the local New Rochelle publication Talk of the Sound, showing the pair sitting in a park. The publication also posted photos of Judge Kettner in London back in April. Tonight, there's fire on Latimer after it's alleged he missed a crucial Senate education vote in order to take the trip. Latimer doesn't deny missing the vote.
I got proper clearance, and I was one of 5 senators that were excused for the vote with the understanding that this was something that I highlighted well in advance of the day that this came up.
The Post on Thursday allegedly speaking to a Democratic Westchester elected official who told them, quote, "I remember George saying he was going on vacation with his wife. That's what he told everybody." And, quote, "Nobody knew it was with another woman until just before the story broke. That was a shocker. And it was, quote, odd that he would miss the budget votes because he was already running for county executive."
Rob wants to pivot to talking about personal issues and issues that I wouldn't touch. You know, I wouldn't go into the fact of his personal life. I wouldn't talk about his father, or I wouldn't talk about his ex-wife.
Reporting for Richard French Live, I'm Ray Ramundi.
Now, we reached out to Judge Kettner for comment, and we were referred to a spokesperson from the Ninth Circuit Court. That spokesman said Judge Kettner's personal matters are personal and has no bearing on her judicial decision making. I want to bring in our panel right now. A lot to unpack here. Richard Brodsky is a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman for Westchester, professor at NYU. He also ran for county executive. Andrew Whitman is our senior political correspondent, and Andrew and I, we shared a stage with these two men, as well as our friends from both the Journal News and Jeannie Zaino, and it was a very spirited debate on Tuesday. And there were some veiled references, not just to missed votes on the part of the county executive, but people basically hinting they could go certain places. Well, they went there now. I'm not going to attribute who went to where with the story that ran in the Post today, but let's start with Minister Latimer, and then we'll deal with certainly Mr. Astorino, because he's got some questions of his own to answer. Richard, listen, he neither confirmed nor denied. That's in and of itself an answer.
You know, with all due respect, I think we're all missing the point. The point of this is that you have an incumbent county executive 10 days.
We'll get to where he's going. There are questions. We're going to talk about the airport. We're going to talk about where the money is.
Who has decided to do this, to use these tactics?
We don't know that, but certainly I don't think you have to be overly cynical to say where was the source of this. But nonetheless, we don't know the fingerprints of how this story went to a local publication in New Rochelle.
I don't know what happened either. What I'm suggesting is that when you use these tactics, big outside Mercer money coming in, and the New York Post weighing in, it looks like they're worried about the outcome. If he was comfortably ahead, he'd be keeping things down.
Let's be fair about this, because there are some legitimate concerns in the public domain in all of this, and that is, if Latimer missed this vote for personal reasons, then that doesn't particularly speak well of his service as a state senator. I don't think the vote was needed, but
And
that
also
does
speaks to judgment.
That does beg the question: where were you and what were you doing when that vote came down? There's also people
There are
like
12
people like to
undecided voters
hang on,
left.
Richard. People like to know who their candidates are. They like to know what their personal biography is, and frankly, Latimer has not been overwhelmingly forthcoming.
Do you know what happened?
No, I don't.
I don't know what happened.
Richard, hold on a second. Hold on. You've been at this long enough. Okay, hold on a second. If there's nothing here, okay, and you've run for a few offices,
I don't know
and
that
you've
there's
been
nothing
challenged,
here.
What do you say?
I don't know that
If there is,
no,
what
no.
do you say?
I don't know that there's nothing here. What I'm trying to say is what matters to the public is who's the county executive. And right now, there are 12 undecided people left in Westchester. This is a base turnout election.
You're talking the politics of it, and in the end, that's what it's going to come down to.
I don't know what happened in reality.
I disagree with your take on the politics because you know as well as I do that this is the kind of story, this is the kind of concern
monopolize the
that
next 12
burns
days.
through issues which I would much rather focus on.
I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
Oh,
You've met enough
Richard.
voters.
You can have your opinion, and you can have your opinion. I'm a guest.
So-
I get my opinion.
Okay, so guest, let me ask you something. Do you think, to the voter out there, or to any candidate from dog catcher to president, that with 12 days till an election, when you're basically neither
If there
confirming or deny
if there
that
are
you,
undecided
7 months
voters,
before
it
the race,
matters.
missed a vote in the assembly to go
If
to
there
London?
are undecided voters, it matters. But we're not in that era anymore. We're in an era that Donald Trump is the proof. You talk about missing a vote on an education bill. The guy got off a bus on Entertainment Tonight. It didn't matter.
That's conflating.
No,
Latimer.
No, fair, fair.
Within the confines of this race, I think Latimer would be well served to explain what happened with this trip to London
Answer that-
and what's going on
Answer
and what
that
is his
specific
personal
point.
life.
Do you think he has a choice with the time that's left to just avoid it, or do you think he gets in front of it?
I think it doesn't matter. Look, I could be wrong.
I asked you to make what choice would you make? Do you get in front of it or do you ignore it?
I would spend my time doing what it takes to turn out Democratic voters. And I don't know this is what I know. When an incumbent is on the attack 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, it says that the polls show it to be closer.
Respectfully, does it not matter, or do you not want it to matter? Because I would like this to be just on issues too, but it matters just because I think this could change votes.
You keep saying it as though you're the oracle on the mount.
No,
I
I'm
say
giving
you're
my
full
opinion.
of it.
I'm on the panel and I'm giving
Yes.
my opinion.
No, you don't say this opinion, but it matters, says God and
let
God's
me just say
assistant.
this.
Oh, God and God's assistant.
Every single election, whenever there's any questions about extra issues, let's just put it that way.
Trump.
Okay, you can put that one all you want.
It didn't stop him from getting elected.
It didn't, and that's the point. It
By the
doesn't
way,
matter.
he did acknowledge, and he came up with an excuse for it. He said it was locker room talk, but he acknowledged it. So, anyway, moving on. Now, as Latimer is dealing with questions about his personal life, he's also pointing a finger directly at his opponent, specifically accusing Astorino of corruption. Andrew, this has to do with an airport.
Yeah, and those charges, Rich, as you mentioned, are centered around the county-owned airport, which is already a major issue in this race, but for other reasons. Last year, Rob Astorino announced plans to lease operational control of the county-owned airport for 40 years in exchange for cash payments that the county could then add to its operating budget. The legislature rejected that deal, and new proposals are now being considered, though residents worry any private operator deal would lead to expanded flights, passenger loads, and flight times, as well as more noise and environmental concerns. Now, the legislature rejected that deal. New proposals are being considered after Astorino left a hole in the county budget equal to the value of that deal's first $15 million payment. That's a move that a lot of people say was done to pressure lawmakers to make the deal. And again, there are those concerns from residents. Now, we come to what Latimer's accusations were, and he met the press yesterday. Latimer accused Astorino of corruption, saying that airport contracts were given out on a pay-to-play basis to Astorino donors. And those specific concerns are that Latimer says 28 firms got airport contracts that were worth in total more than $55 million. And Latimer says those 28 firms gave a total of more than $200,000, and there you see the numbers in front of you, to Astorino's campaign. Astorino says neither he nor the airport did anything wrong. And I spoke with him about it, or we caught up with Astorino about that the other day.
None of this is true, and the county attorney's office, the law department, thoroughly vetted this. And this is money that was at the airport for the purpose of operations and explaining what is happening at the airport.
Latimer says he's not buying that answer, especially given that the county attorney that Mr. Astorino referred to was appointed by and works for Astorino.
If he's so confident that opinion would hold muster, then he should submit it out and see if an external legal opinion would also reinforce that.
And there are even more allegations tonight. There were the accusations about the airport, but even more allegations connected to the Westchester race today. This from the corruption trial of New York City Corrections Union President Norman Seabrook. Now, Jonah Rechnitz, who has already pleaded guilty to making political contributions in exchange for favorable treatment, and who was linked to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, former Chief of Department Phil Banks, Seabrook, and Astorino, took the stand and dished some dirt on Astorino today, testifying under oath that he and two others who had given cash to Astorino's campaign met with Astorino, asked them about getting county police chaplain designations, which would provide special parking privileges. Neither man was a religious official. Neither man lived in Westchester County. Rechnitz testified that Astorino agreed to talk to his commissioner of public safety, and after that, the chaplain positions were approved. There's more. Rechnitz says Astorino approached him at his office with a picture of a Rolex watch. Rechnitz offered to buy it for him. Astorino, according to Rechnitz's testimony, said he could not take it as a gift and should pay something for it. Later, he said that Astorino paid $2,000 for the watch, which was worth $10,000. Rechnitz saying, "I paid the rest," Rich.
And as we speak, we're reaching out to the Astorino campaign for comment on this. Listen, there was a lot of questions. Andrew touched on some there. The pay-to-play allegation regarding the airport. There's $200,000 made in contributions. People got contracts. Whether it's coincidence or not, we'll talk later on a somewhat unrelated issue, but still some of the same questions when we talk about Menendez. But nonetheless, this thing has gotten ugly. And it didn't look this ugly a couple months ago, and certainly 4 years ago it wasn't this ugly when Bramson and Astorino were going, whether it's because it's close or whatever else. You saw where even Latimer was willing to go, where he said, I'm not talking about his father, I'm not talking about his
This doesn't
wife.
help George any more than the other stuff helped Rob. If my theory is correct, and that's the lesson of the last 2 years, this is about the base. The smartest thing George did at that debate at Iona was kept talking about Trump. And what was interesting was that Rob's response was, well, Trump doesn't matter, but he flew to London. What George has to do to win is to turn out his base. What Rob has to do is to turn out his. This stuff back and forth will not matter, with one exception. That watch story, if it's true, is a problem for Rob, because it's the first hard evidence of something that, if proven, was illegal.
The guy who was testifying, let's be clear, he's a weasel. He's admitted to trying to buy favor and curry favor from elected officials to some degree of success and some degree not of success. But he testified under oath today, so there's the penalty of perjury hanging over the things that he said, and so that adds a little more credibility to it. The allegations from Latimer about Astorino's handling of the airport remain just that, allegations, and these are allegations coming 13, 12 days from Election Day. So at least from my standpoint,
there is one more piece we haven't talked about, which is, we touched on this last night. There's also the question of Mr. Mercer and his hundreds of thousands of dollars for Mr. Astorino this close to the campaign. And then, as Richard touched on, the overarching specter of Donald Trump and how much that will or will not impact the vote in November. Remind everybody who Mr. Mercer is, who he's affiliated himself in the past, and also how much money he's pumped into this race.
Okay, Mercer is a conservative donor who has given millions of dollars both to Donald Trump as well as to Breitbart, and we're going to get into more detail on that. He put $1 million into a pro-Astorino super PAC that has been putting together attack ads against George Latimer.
And let's touch on that one on the other side of the break here. And
Bill
again, we're still
O'Reilly
trying to get last second.
Mercer's not a conservative. He's a Bannon nationalist, and that's why it's more interesting than conservatives. We got to start protecting those few Republican conservatives that are left.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about that. More controversies, as we told you about, in the Astorino-Latimer race. It's shaping up to be the most interesting race in our entire region. And again, this one involves, what we just touched on, a huge GOP fundraiser pumping real money into Westchester to support Astorino really close to Election Day. Stay with us.